Hello folks, today is June 15th, 2013. Welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. Today I wanted to comment a bit on recent events, especially concerning how many people seem to have now discovered that we are living in a global surveillance society. That globalization has brought with it the necessity for increased security, spying, and I wanted to suggest that in spite of recent revelations about things, for example, that the National Security Agency in the United States has been doing, and the very elaborate spying apparatus that it has constructed, including the PRISM program on the internet, that in a sense, by focusing on that, we are looking at the wrong thing, in my opinion. Now, I am not saying that I am not sympathetic. I understand why some people are concerned about this. If we put all of our help in the present system of things, and we think, well, how in the world can we possibly untangle ourselves from this big mess that we find ourselves in, that one would most likely feel pretty hopeless. In fact, I see a lot of that online. People posting more conspiracy videos on YouTube, arguing that this spying apparatus is another example of the infiltration of this imaginary Illuminati. Of course, the word imaginary is a word that I'm adding there, into our lives. Well, let's step back a moment and look at it from a different perspective. The present world order, or as Immanuel Wallerstein has called it, the capitalist world system, is collapsing. The evidences of that collapse are all around us. The banking crisis recently in Cyprus, in Europe, the problems occurring right now in Syria, the fact that now for the first time there's going to be much more open support for the rebels, or at least some of the rebels who are fighting now in Syria. The fact that we have troops now in the country of Jordan as a way of protecting the Jordanian kingdom from the possibility of the Syrian war spreading into that country. Bellicose threats coming from Russia about not doing something right now in Syria. Of course, Syria is a client state of Russia. The deteriorating environmental crisis in the world, perhaps the thing which is most ignored about the present day crises in the world. We see the evidences in the recent horrendous tornado in Oklahoma, Superstorm Sandy, which devastated a whole chunk of the northeastern part of the United States, Hurricane Katrina, which destroyed entire sections of New Orleans, Louisiana, as well as parts of other states, especially the state of Mississippi. We realize, I think, if we look at it that way, that the present system, the profit-based system, which has been in effect tearing the environment apart to support itself, is failing. I would suspect that nobody really knows what to do about it. The threats which exist in the world today are not imaginary. There are very real threats. I certainly do not envy the position of any leading government official right now, including President Barack Obama, who must listen to that daily intelligence briefing. The things that he hears must be horrendous. Instead, people look back at when the president promised more transparency and promised to do away with the surveillance state. Well, once reality hits you in the rear end, things don't seem the same anymore. And I would imagine that that is what has happened to President Obama as well. Look, it's much easier to throw stones from the outside, but once you are running the show from the inside, throwing stones can be very dangerous. Instead, there are tremendous responsibilities which are put on any political leader, especially the President of the United States, the most powerful country in the world. So I am neither defending nor attacking the decision. I'm not political or partisan, and I don't want my comments to come off either as a defense of President Obama or an attack on him, but I do understand it. And I would imagine that no matter who was in that office right now, that person would be doing pretty close to the same thing, and perhaps not as well in many cases. Regardless, you have Mr. Snowden, who was not actually even an employee of the NSA, who worked for an agency, an organization that was an independent contractor to the agency. And he saw this information. Well, anyone who has followed the Patriot Act in either of its versions and what has been done with the Patriot Act knows that the things that were supposedly released by Mr. Snowden were not really secret. Maybe some of the specific details weren't known, but it's not really a surprise. Anybody who is even reasonably informed about how modern-day intelligence operates, and the stuff, for example, that's been going on with cyber warfare between the United States, China, and other countries, knew that this stuff was going on. It's not a surprise, I don't think, to most even reasonably informed people. Unfortunately, we are living in a world where a lot of people are not that reasonably informed. Instead of relying upon valid sources of information, like academic journals, other research publications, people instead rely upon YouTube videos. In fact, when I have often challenged, which I very commonly do, conspiratorial thinking, the response that I commonly get back is, do some research. And the last person that said that to me, I said, research in what? And the person had no response. Well, I knew what the person meant. Person meant, watch YouTube videos. That is commonly referred to by YouTubers as doing research. That I have watched a lot of YouTube videos, therefore I understand the subject. Well, certainly that is not any kind of research from an academic perspective. But if that's all a person knows, then I could see why a person might very easily have been surprised at these supposed revelations by Mr. Snowden. But I think that what Mr. Snowden did, however well-intentioned, and I am certainly not questioning his motivations, were misdirected or misguided. Instead of focusing so much attention on this huge surveillance apparatus that exists in the United States and in many, perhaps most, countries around the world, instead, we should be asking the question, what kind of world do we want to live in? What has gone wrong with the world? Why is the world in such horrendous shape that these types of intelligence are necessary, even when done by somebody like Mr. Obama, who really was very clearly not in favor of them? Why would he be doing it? Well, again, the answer, I think, is pretty obvious. Because he has a lot of information. More information than I would want to have. So again, my question is, primarily, what kind of world do we want to live in? And my response would be, not a world dominated by nation states. To many conspiracy-minded people, talk of a new world order reminds them of this silly Illuminati conspiracy, this magical idea that somehow there are these super powerful elites that are, through various means, including occultism, trying to establish a new world order where they will be dominant. Well, that's not the new world order that I think we are headed toward. The global capitalist system is failing. Exactly how it will fail, how soon, I don't know. But it's failing very rapidly. And I don't think that it has that much more time. What that means exactly, I don't know. When it does fail, I think we will be left with a world with basically no functioning national or perhaps even regional government apparatus. We will be forced into a world of localism, living on the local level. Gradually, I think, we will rebuild a new world order from the bottom up. So I think that's what we need to get ready for. Rather than focusing on survivalism or preparing for as an individual, we need to ask, when all of this stuff begins to happen, how can I be a servant of humanity? How can I help other people at a time when they may have absolutely no idea of what to do? how can I be a source of spiritual support and material support to other people I run into? Not how can I bury myself someplace and, as some people in the conspiracy movement say, bug out, run away from the problems in the world and worry about my own self. That is certainly not the answer. So that is basically my conclusion, that although this information released by Mr. Snowden is tantalizing, it is a distraction from the real problems that we have. The problems are not surveillance. Surveillance is a symptom of the problems. Instead, we need to address the actual problems. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.